Drive situation.
Good morning. My name is Jordana Kumst. I'm with the Edgecombe and Gainsborough Avenue Citizens Association, and I'm with the Community Advocacy Group, a member. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Courtney Cephas from the Forest Hill Civic Association, supporting the community. Thank you. Good morning. Courtney Cephas from the Forest Hill Civic Association, and also a member of the Community Advocacy Group, here to support the presentation by the community.
Thank you very much for that introduction. We will now go right into the report on the Junction Main Road.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and other members of your committee. Let me start out by wishing for you and your members all the very best in this new year. Last year was a challenging year, and we look forward to improved fortunes in the year ahead. We have been asked to present to the committee specifically on two matters. The first relating to the status of the works on the Junction Main Road, the so-called Agwalta Vale to Broadgate contract. And we have a prepared presentation which Mr. Downer will go through in a little while. Suffice it to say, Chairman, that it is a matter of public record that this contract has had its challenges and its difficulties, and having been delayed for some substantial time, and having had its budget increase due to certain geotechnical characteristics of the corridor. However, where we are now represents the best position that we've ever been in respect of this job. As the tabled report indicates, the outstanding works as at now is just about 4% of what of the total contract. So in other words, we have delivered on 96% of the contract. The works which remain are what might be considered to be peripheral to the substance of the contract, in that there is a small portion of resurfacing or improvement to the pavement that remains to be done. It's a 4.8 kilometer stretch. That's the extent of the roadway, and the outstanding surface work that needs to be done is just about 400 meters, somewhere between 100 and 400 meters. But let me just clarify, it's not that that section of the road is in ruinate. It's just that in terms of the different layers, I think we're supposed to put on 2 layers of asphalt. For the outstanding section, we've only put on one layer, and so the other layer needs to go on. So the other works which remain, we're doing some toe walls, which again are being built on the periphery of the site, and that's essentially to enhance the safety features of the work, to prevent against precipitous sliding of the embankment. and there are a few what we call head walls which need to be constructed around some of the drains. None of these works which remain affect the functionality of the corridor. In other words, the client has been able to enjoy the entirety of the corridor. And so, as I indicated before, we are at the best place that we can, that we have been on this contract. Suffice it to say that a lot of the challenges that we've had on this contract is directly related to the capability and the capacity of the contractor to deliver. Under the contract, it has been said, and I've heard, anecdotal pronouncements that said, well, why don't you take away the contract from the contractor? The truth is that in practice, it's very difficult to terminate a contract. It is more expedient to, as I've often said, to try and drag the contract across the finish line, which is what we're doing. The contractor has engaged the services of a number of subcontractors to complete the outstanding works, and that is now being done as we speak. So that is a bird's eye view of the Junction Road contract. Mr. Downer will give you some additional details, and then I'll take some questions as they arise.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Morning, committee members and colleagues. I'll just walk you through the presentation. At this point, I'm not sure why the pointer is not working. It's turned on, yes. If you can assist me here. Okay. Just press it and see if it moves. Or can somebody monitor it while I speak up there? Because I'll just walk through while I do it. That is not working. Okay, I think the technical assistant is perhaps just going to flip the slides as I actually speak on each slide from the control room.
Of course, if there are any initial questions while we wait,
I would hope that we would go through the slides, get a better understanding of what is there so that we don't have an overrun of questions.
Sure. So,
give a minute or two.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Morning again, Chairman. I'm not sure if the technical assistant upstairs is perhaps just going to. Okay, thank you. So the presentation actually covers 4 large areas: projects, financial performance, plan and budget, fiscal year 22-23, and the challenges and risk. So what we have here is actually a dashboard view of the Junction main road, where the location is Broadgate to Agualtaville, which is 4.8 kilometers, as Mr. Hunter said earlier. The photograph you're looking at there is an aerial view of the area as of yesterday, which shows that the works are substantially completed. The contractor is Surrey Paving and Aggregate Company Limited. The length of the road, as I mentioned earlier, 4.8 kilometers, and the project commenced in November 2017, and the original completion date was January 2019. The revised completion date, as approved, is actually, or the revised completion date is February 2022, and that is what the latest in the discussions with the contractor. The original contract sum is actually $598 million approximately, and the revised contract sum is 1.117 billion Jamaican dollars. And the amount certified and paid to date is 989 million Jamaican dollars, and the balance is 127.9 or 128 million Jamaican dollars. So that is actually a dashboard view of the project itself. I'm just trying to get this thing working. Okay. Some of the key activities that remain, as Mr. Hunter had mentioned earlier, is pavement works. Approximately 82% is completed. Drainage works, 88%. Potable water, 100% completed, because, as you know, we're doing infrastructure improvement and not just roads these days. Anywhere we're doing a major road works, we're putting in water line, and where necessary, sewer line also. Signage and road markings, as you can appreciate that with some of the remaining pavement works, we would not have completed the road markings because we needed to finish the pavement works. Some of the signage also, because of the side walls that are being done, what we call the toe walls, we wouldn't have put in some of the signage as yet either. So the signage is actually 30%. And we're also doing fiber optic ducts, which we do on all our new roadways these days as part of policy. So the construction activities that remain are largely some toe walls, as you can see there, 500 meters of what we call type A and 500 meters of type B toe walls. And these are short walls right adjacent to the slope cut, so that it will help to stabilize, and in the event that there's any movement, it will remain behind the wall and not so much onto the roadway that will disrupt the traffic. We have some catch basins being done, which is part of the drainage works, and provision of all concrete form work is actually being done as well, which is form work, and then you get the pour the concrete. Major outstanding works, 1.2 kilometers of toe walls, some head walls, 24 end treatments, and shaping of cut slopes. We still have some of that to do. This is within the last 200 meters that we have that shaping being done, and the asphalt works we mentioned earlier, and fiber ducts, signage and road markings. It's not moving from there. I'm not sure why this thing is not switching, but if I may continue from the sheet I have before me. I'm so sorry why the thing is not moving. Okay. Well, actually what we have remaining are some pictorials which we would like for you to see of the completion of the, I don't know if anyone is upstairs can assist in just moving the screen. Okay, here you go. So these are some pictorials of the roadway depicting how it has progressed and where we are right now with the works being completed. We also will be sharing with you the Truevis area, which is a known location along the corridor not part of the current contract, but an area along the corridor that is problematic, that we treated as a separate contract that was awarded last year, and the works have begun on that one, which is called the Truevis Stabilization. We're coming up to that shortly. It's just not moving. Okay. Again, as you can see there, the slope stabilization, very challenging for the St. Mary soil, which is heavily clay. Okay. So this now is the Truevis stabilization we mentioned earlier. Again, the contract amount there is 321 million Jamaican dollars. Contractor is Surrey Paving and Aggregate, and the progress of that contract is 15%. Construction works begun in October 2021. Site clearance and setting out activities are completed. Excavation works and the importation of boulders for use on the site are underway. The project is expected to be completed April 2022 as scheduled. This, however, has caused the contractor to take on board qualified subcontractors to aid in his pushing ahead with the project. And these are some pictures that actually shows the area in question, where, as you can see there, some of the work has in fact begun. On your right-hand side, down the section close to the Wagwater River, is where we actually have the retaining mechanism that will be put in place, retaining walls, and on the hillside we will be having drainage improvement, cut-off drains, because one of the problems that we have assessed is that there is water that is actually seeping into the basement, the base below the road surface, that causes the area to slip, given the nature of the soil, clay, among other things. And these are other photos of the area, as you can see there, as the work progresses. Okay, so that gives you, in a nutshell, the Junction Road. We'll take your questions, and then we will move to the Charlemont, which is the other question that was asked of us by the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Chairman, if I may, I just had a concern about particularly the Truevis stabilization and the level of the engineering work that would have been done or is being done to assure us that over an extended period of time we won't have the land slippages, because I know to expand the road you have to take off a significant part of the hillside, which would have disturbed the natural vegetation and everything there. So how is this something which is expected to last 10, 15, 20 years, 50? What assurances you can give the public on that?
The design life for the solution proposed is 75 years, and that relates to the code specification on concrete works. In essence, what we're going to do is create a massive retaining wall. It's called a diamond, similar to the ones that are further along in the junction. And we will be protecting that with rock revetment to prevent scour of the base. It's been designed using proven software. The design methodologies are well established worldwide. We had soil investigations done to determine the parameters of the soil, and those were all incorporated in the design effort.
Thank you, Chairman. The original contract, which was budgeted at 597. In your report, you said that the contract, which started in November 2017, was 1.1 billion. That was because of the change of scope of the original contract. Am I right?
Okay, so there are some changes in the contract price, in the original contract price, due to a number of issues. Slight change in the scope of works, but as we've indicated there, we have in terms of the scope, we have incorporated some water lines that were not in the original contract. We have incorporated ducts for fiber optic cables that were not in the original contract. Because as you know, Member Phillips, and I've said it here before, that the government has taken a decision that whenever we do any major roadworks, we should incorporate what we consider to be basic, additional basic infrastructure in the corridor. So we incorporated those. One of the other items.
All right, go ahead.
One of the other items that resulted in a sizable portion of the increase was that the original contract was based on a premise that whatever we cut off the hillside, we'd be able to use it as fill, cut and fill. It turns out, unfortunately, that when we cut and the material was taken to the lab and the analysis was done on the material was not suitable for the intended purpose. So we could not use the cut to undertake filling, and so we had to find a new quarry in Mango Valley that we were able to bring in the material.
And that would have caused some of the delay also.
That would have caused some of the delay. Yeah.
So the original design that was done, is that what we have on the ground now? Because I remember that piece going across the farmlands, straightening a section of it. In this committee itself, you said that...
That's the portion going towards Agualta Vale?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the base. Yes, that remains,
Yeah.
So it remained basically true to form from Agualta Vale to Georgia. Where most of the changes occurred was the section from Georgia to Broadgate. But
that was just explained to us about the soil sampling and ensuring, because the part to Broadgate, the unstableness of that section itself would have caused some delay also in taking down that hillside. And I remember we have had this conversation in this committee and other committees before about the concern of taking down that hillside, and if the actual geological reporting that you got from whichever consultant, I mean, I cast a doubt on it because.
Okay, so let me address that,
yes.
member. First and foremost, and I used to be an engineer many years ago, but I still remember.
Previous lifetime.
I still remember a few things.
Yes.
First and foremost, when you were an engineer in school, they want to tell you soil mechanics is not a perfect science, okay? And persons who have worked with soil, whether it is drilling well to find water or estimating amount of rock that exists, it is not a perfect science. And so you have one of two options, and I say this with no apologies. You have one of two options. You can either spend a lot of money at the design stage to get the perfect information before you go to construction, but there's a thing in management called the price of perfect information. You pay for that, and you don't get to construction. Or alternatively, you can get a certain amount of information, not rudimentary information, but you can get sufficient information to inform a construct, and then you make adjustment during the construction period. And that is a perfectly plausible way of implementing projects, perfectly plausible. Now, the implications for that, and there are pluses and minuses for any strategy that you employ. The good thing about that strategy is that you can move into construction in a relatively short time period. The downside is that it will have budget implication, because as you know, any contract, this is the contract here, typical FIDIC contract. The contract is based on an estimated quantities multiplied by a fixed rate. And the contracts have a caveat that says, notwithstanding what is in the contract, at the end of the day, the contractor gets paid for the work done. So it's what we call measured work contract. So he gets paid for exactly what is done, no more, no less. So what it is that the soil investigation that was done for this contract was, well, let's put it this way, and in hindsight, 2020 vision, but the soil investigation was not exhaustive. Let me put it that way. The soil investigation was not exhaustive. Based on the samples that were collected and analyzed, the view was formed that the material had sufficient capability to be used. It so happens that when we actually started the construction, the preponderance of evidence was that the soil was not suitable for that purpose.
No, and that's the point. That's the point I'm making. Right. And I mean, also, it would also help to direct the equipments that would be needed also to take down that hillside, which also I'm sure gave you some delay in the execution of the construction. So, be that you have it perfect at the front end or back end, because when you look at the contract sum, and within 12 months you are having nearly 100% increase in the contract sum, then it is going to raise a red flag.
Come on,
it's going to raise a red flag. And then you may throw it on the contractor, and I may throw it on the NAA for bad design. But and why I'm raising it, Mr. Hunter, is that it ought to be a learning lesson, especially when you're going into areas like that with soil type of that type, because one is getting to make sure you have the right equipment on hand. Because I always say that every delay has a cost, even if it is going to cost the contractor, but it has a cost.
Yeah. Member Phillips, let me assure you that if there's a delay in the contract which is attributable to the owner, the contractor is compensated for that, and that is a claim, okay? If there's a delay in the contract which is attributable to the contractor, again, the contract provides for remedy to the owner, and that is well established in contract. The notion of getting things perfect before you start is attractive, at first blush. But practically, if we were, say, to continue work along the corridor, the question would be, how much soil investigation would one consider judicious in the circumstance, and how much would we be prepared to pay for that investigation, and what is the elapsed time to get all that information? And even when you do that, what is the degree of reliability that when you actually start construction, what you're going to find in place is going to conform 100% to what you found in the initial stages, in the sample? And the reality is that the nexus between what you find during construction and what you perceive in the investigation, that is fluid, and that's the nature of soil. In fact, Member Phillips, it is a known fact, and you can attest to that on the North Coast Highway, North-South Highway, the section in St. Mary has 3 significant soil failures. They're still there now, because I'm from St. Mary, as you know, for the record. And St. Mary, in addition to being famous for banana and myself, it is also famous for having very, very unstable soil. So what we found along the Junction corridor was not anything far-fetched from a soil's point of view. The only question was, were we in a position to be able to define it precisely before we started? And the answer was no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hunter, I had some concerns, read the same matter raised by Member Phillips. But just to continue along that grain, who is really responsible for the error of judgment in cases like that? Because if it is that we have several contractors who are bidding for a contract, the error of judgment, that onus ought to be on such contractor rather than on the taxpayer.
Sorry.
And before you go ahead, the second to that, you had mentioned about you're at a point of somehow literally trying to drag the contractor across the finish line.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the capabilities found out that the current contractor is not able to deliver. Somebody who has been in the business for over 20 years, as I can see. I'm just wondering, as we go ahead, such challenges, if you could say what they are, and if they had been remedied, or if not, how do we propose to go ahead, including such a contractor, in being granted such?
Okay, good questions. Okay, let me address the first question and the assertion of error in judgment. I know if there's an admission that the challenges and the difficulties and the escalation in price on that contract was simply due to an error in judgment, then that would give, a neat tie-up of the issue, and we would walk out of here being chastised, whatever. But, sir, as I indicated before, the contract is what is called a measured work contract. So what the final contract price is the cost of the job. Let me repeat that. It's a measured work contract, which means that the contractor gets paid only for the work that he did. So whether or not you knew that it was going to be $10 before or after, it doesn't matter in terms of the contract price. What matters is the budget, because you would have budgeted to spend $10 and you end up spending $20. And so, as I said before, the choice that we have to make in construction is, do we do preliminary work, preliminary investigation to get the contract price as accurate as possible? And I'm saying that is not a gift. That is something you would have to invest in extensive soil investigation, both horizontally and laterally, for you to be able to precisely define the formation that you have. And you'd have to do borehole. So in practice, you can do borehole every 50 meters, or you can do borehole every 200 meters. If you do borehole every 10 meters, you'll have a perfect definition of what exists. But there is a cost to that, and you don't move to construction because you are busy doing that. And so it's a choice you make. The point, as I made before, is that doing it one way gives you perfect information, but it's the upfront cost and the time. Doing it the other way, the final price becomes elastic, but the benefit of it is that you start the work ahead of time. Now, there is a lot of value in starting work earlier than starting work later. And as I said before, at the end of the day, you do not pay anything more than what was done because it's a measured work contract. And a lot of people seem not to understand it. So the fact that this contract moved from 5 something to 1 billion, 1 billion is the cost of what was done. That's the point I'm trying to make. So whether you had gotten that figure right before or afterwards, it doesn't change. That is what you have bought, $1 billion worth of work, because it's a measured work contract. Is that clear?
So just for those out in the wider Jamaica, you're saying to us that the first contract was for 597 million. But because of what transpired, what took place over a period of time with the movement of earth and all of that, you would have gone up to 1.1 something billion dollars. But it's not that it is an overrun. It's not an overrun per se. It is work that has to be done after the fact that you have found out that...
Okay.
Sorry?
Okay. No. So it is work that was required to be done to deliver to the client the product that the client desired. Desired. Yeah.
Desire.
Yeah, desired.
Our design.
Yeah. And again, Chairman, I will use a recent example. I mean, the Garden Town project, that contract was for $178 million. It came in at $130-something million. Because again, one of the assumptions that we made in putting the contract together in the beginning was that what we're going to find underneath remember, the embankment had collapsed, and we made certain assumptions about what is down there. And based on that assumption, we priced the contract for $178 million. Now, we could have removed all the material down there first and then see what is there before you do the contract. But again, practically, you tend not to want to do that because what it is, there's a benefit to starting early, but there's a risk in terms of what you may find and how it adjusts the quantities. So it's a balancing act. But the assurance that I wish to give the committee, the assurance that I want to give the committee is that the price that you pay for the contract is the real cost of the product that the customer wants. So that's the first matter. The second matter, member, regarding the performance of the contractor. The government of Jamaica has, on 2 separate occasions, to the best of my knowledge, attempted to develop an apparatus to rate the performance of contractors and to pronounce on policy prescription arising from that rating. I know with perfect certainty that one such initiative was started by the then Office of the Contractor General probably 10, 12 years ago, and that it was stillborn. Another attempt was made by the Minister of Finance when Wesley Hughes was the Financial Secretary, and that too didn't go anywhere. Suffice it to say that about 2 years ago, the government mandated the Public Procurement Commission to work with the Office of Public Procurement Policy at the Ministry of Finance to develop a contractor performance template that is to be used for all of government. And a group of persons have been working on that template, and 2 presentations have been made to Infrastructure Committee of Cabinet on that template. We at the NWA are involved in that exercise, and we in fact use the Garden Town project as a pilot for that template, and we're pretty happy with what we have come up with. In essence, the 2 previous efforts at developing a contractor performance template was like a top-down. The government decided this is the template and we want people to use it. This time around, we're doing it differently. A template has been developed, but that template is now being extensively discussed with practitioners. So the Master Builders Association is in on it. The Construction Industry Council, the Jamaica Manufacturers Association, a whole set of consultations have been taking place in the last 6 months with all the professional groups, the engineers, the quantity surveyors, the architects, to say, here is a template that we have come up with that we want to use to measure the performance of contractors. Tell me what you think of it. And input has come back and adjustments are being made. The intention being, so soon as everyone signs off on that template, that will now be used to measure the performance of contractors. And of course, there are checks and balances in the template to avoid bias, to avoid any malice, because, and to allow for due process. So it is something that, as I said, a group of persons have been working on. We have piloted it on a number of contracts, and we're pretty happy that so soon as this template becomes official government of Jamaica instrument, it should translate in an improved performance of our contractors. Because let us be candid here. When you examine any government of Jamaica contract, the onus for performance is on the contractor. Let me say that again. If you examine any government of Jamaica contract, it has basically 2 lines. It says, the government warrants to pay you for this job. You, the contractor, warrants to do the job. That is what the contract is about. So, to the extent that there is a cadre of good contractors, and they keep their end of the bargain, and the government keeps its end of the bargain in terms of paying, we'll have a better product. But we still have a way to go.
Mr. Hunter, is that, and you have the general public that said that we don't have no good contractors here in Jamaica. But I always say that it depends on what it is that the NWA is willing to pay for. So instead of giving them 2 layers of asphalt, you may want the contractor to put down 1 layer, but he gets bad name. Because you said it, you said that it is what you are willing to pay for, and it is what you are now paying the contractor to deliver. So again, it comes down to what it is that the government of Jamaica is willing to pay for, quantity or quality, compared to what it is that you're hiring the contractor to give. Right? But I just want to end, though, by the Broadgate section. Is there more stabilization work that will be done on that section? That's the cutting.
There is a little section, a little overcrop that, we have looked at it. The numbers, the analysis that we have done in terms of the stability of that section, the numbers look good. But again, from a management point of view, we sort of say to ourselves, okay, so the numbers look good, but what if, because as I said before, soil mechanics is not a perfect science. So notwithstanding how good the numbers look, what do we perceive to be the level of risk? And there is a little section that we are a little bit uncomfortable about. And so we want to go back and do some additional work, just a little bit, for safety reason. And it is a kind of keep your fingers crossed reason. There is no analytical doctrine that says we must do this. But we think that the cost that the money that we will pay will buy us some comfort and some peace of mind. And we want to be able to do that. And we will do that. So you're saying shortly.
That if we had a day or 2 of rain, that the stability of that hillside should hold?
Yes, it should, and it has. And in fact, the thing about that corridor, since we've done the works, there have not been any issues, notwithstanding the rains.
Okay.
But again, you can't be too safe, so we'll buy a little safety there.
All right, final question, because I know time is running for me. Given that we have had the issue of on the North-South Highway and now, what's the NWA doing to build its own capacity in this area in terms of being able to determine the type of soil? Because we're going to have future projects where they're going to have to cut through hills, etc., given the terrain of the country. So what are you doing to ensure that we don't have another repeat? I take your point that what you have spent is what has been done, but it came out at twice what the estimate was. And given Bowie ran into problems, and I think that may have contributed to them not completing the North-South. So as the agency that, even if you are just monitoring, you're monitoring on behalf of the taxpayers. So what are you doing to build your own capacity in that regard?
Well, first of all, I would have a little issue with the basic premise, because of all the things that we have done, you've used one example to form a conclusion that perhaps we have a deficiency of capacity. And I would suggest that statistically, that can't hold. Notwithstanding, the NWA has its own internal capability. I mean, Roger here behind me is a world-renowned expert when it comes to the matters that he spoke about. I wish he had spoken a bit louder, so you would have been more persuasive. But and we supplement internal knowledge and experience by buying services from the private sector. So, and that is how the business works internationally. Let's be candid. The government does not do enough of this kind of work to afford to have in-house capability of a certain level on a continuous basis. That is not our business model. Our business model is that we have core competence in-house, and where we need to embellish that, we purchase service. And when we have purchased a service and utilized the service, we jettison it. We do believe that enjoining the services of the private sector is the model that we want to subscribe to. So we're not going to claim that we are going to be the only terms of reference. No.
Yes, Mr. Hunter. It's members slowly, by the way, if you don't know the name, Delroy Slowly. I'm new to the whole political environment. But in any case, though, I was one of those persons who used to somehow look from the outside, looking in, and there's a perception sometimes. And I know even now we have this, in terms of this gross overrun, we have our own thinking and ideas and thoughts on it. You have explained to some extent, but the wider public out there, I can understand. And in this present time when, persons are so quick to talk about corruption, my interest now is taking it back to before it begins, as in who gets the contract. I know that due process is taken, but sometimes how do we prevent persons from circumventing that due process? Because once they know that, yes, we will have to be paid for whatever work done. We talk about, government at the end of the day has to pay. It doesn't matter if it's 100%, 200%, or 200% overrun. But if it is that somebody is so accustomed to the system, the in and out, and we want to remove perceptions of corruption in terms of who gets that contract, that is my major concern. You have several persons who are bidding. You understand?
Okay.
And persons who believe that they can, bid at a certain below, and once they get the contract, even if it goes 300%, they will be paid. It can't be. I mean, how do we protect?
Okay, so Mr. Slowly, a couple of things here. I've been at the NWA now 8 years. when I went to the NWA, the Auditor General had just done a study coming out of JDIP and found that 87% of NWA's contracts were handed out, direct contract, okay? You don't have to take my word for it, but based on our own thing, right now, 93% of all contracts awarded by the NWA are awarded in a competitive way and in accordance with the established procurement rules. But you know, Mr. Slowly, we all suffer from, in psychology, there's a term called the halo effect. And basically what it says is that, you know, if you're a handsome person, people don't perceive you to do bad things. And if you're ugly, people perceive you to do bad things. And the converse of the halo, the converse of the halo effect is what's called the horn effect. And basically it says that if you work with government, no matter what good you do, people think that you're bad and that you're corrupt. I mean, that's just how life is. When you work with government, unfortunately, you're not allowed to make mistakes because you're either corrupt or incompetent. I mean, we have somehow convinced ourselves as a civil society that that is what we have. There are other persons in government who are more empowered and eloquent than I to defend or to challenge that premise. But suffice it to say that we will stand on our record, the empirical evidence. And anyone who wants to know how a particular contract is let, we have an open door. The contract subject of our discussion was awarded by way of public tender. The price in the contract was deemed to be the right price by the approving authorities. As you know, the procurement rules allow for a 15% above or below the engineer's estimate for acceptable, for, you know, for value for money and so on and so forth. So what it is, Mr. Slowly, I feel, you know, your pain. You know, I've gone to the barber and I'm sitting in the barber chair and I hear people talking, you know, and the good thing about having masks these days, people can't see your face. And they say all kind of things about what you get and what you don't get or whatever. I mean, you know, it's unfortunate, but I will say two things. When it comes to our integrity, we take no prisoners when it comes to that, and when it comes to our competence. There is again another feeling that if you work with the government, it's because you weren't good enough to get the other job. Nonsense. What it is that we work under very, very difficult circumstances, and as managers, we have to optimize on a daily basis. The clean and tidy solutions that a lot of people talk about and want, real life doesn't give you that. There are very few low-hanging fruits in life, okay? And so every day we get up and we go out there and we give it our best shot in very difficult circumstances. And a lot of the critics could not survive in that environment. But then, maybe I get it wrong.
And Chair, just to add to that, I would like to say that with NWA, they get the most requests from the Integrity Commission as it relates to contract. Anything that goes out from NWA, there's a request coming from Integrity Commission. So there's a process that is in place, and it's a matter of how we improve the public awareness of how transactions are conducted in the government service. Thanks.
So thank you very much, NWA and Chief Technical from the Ministry. If there is no other question as it relates to this subject matter that is before us on the agenda, we will now move to the second.
No, Chairman, I had my microphone, if you would allow me to make an intervention.
Sorry?
I have turned on my device, hoping that you would allow me, from the Office of the Public Defender, to make an intervention in respect of the Junction Road. and rehabilitation of that section of the road that has been the subject of discussion.
Thank you very much, Madam. I would not have paid attention to your mic being turned on. Normally would have indicated just by a show of hand, and I would have recognized you. So you
I'm guided, sir. So I take it that I can go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Madam.
Okay. We at the Office of the Public Defender, we have followed this rehabilitation of the road from Broadgate out to the roundabout. And Mr. Hunter and Mr. Downer are aware of our exchange of correspondence and communication on this particular subject. We note that we have been reminded that the first completion date was 2019. And notwithstanding that, we had other projected completion dates over time stated in Parliament, and even now we're getting a new projected date. The point I make, Mr. Chairman, is that whilst we talk about the rehabilitation of the road, we have failed to recognize the impact that this rehabilitation, upgraded, which is necessary, has had on the communities that have been affected. So, for instance, we have seen the realignment of the road. We have seen change realignment of the road. We have seen dust nuisance. We have seen noise nuisance. We have seen situation where for months motorists and persons who live in the community have to go via other routes, increasing transportation cost substantially. We have also seen and witnessed in that corridor where for months no work takes place. Nobody knows. The added lack of community involvement, Chairman and members of this committee, is that the average person in Broadgate, Truevis, or Gualter Vale had no idea as to what to expect, what it is they are to expect when there is going to be compulsory acquisition of their properties. Who it is who has the responsibility to sensitize the communities to this is what it will mean for you living in the community. You can't prove you own the land, but we are going to pay you for your house, and you are going to have to move out of the house, and so on. And ultimately, Chair, the question is how it is communities who bear the burden of these developments, which are necessary, we will say, and we will admit, because we're well acquainted with the narrowness and the difficulties of the Junction Road. How it is we sensitize citizens in terms of community engagements, and we know of one meeting out in Broadgate, which was after our office had gone there when the people had called on us. We know that there's a liaison person employed, whether by the contractor, to inform people, and we know that there was a representative of the St. Mary, or is it the Port Maria Chamber of Commerce, sitting on some review committee. Chairman, with the greatest respect, those are not adequate measures to be taken when we're dealing with people's livelihoods. People would know, those of us, all of us, who pass through Junction, know that the people in Broadgate sell their fruits and their coconuts and their bananas and their grapefruits. And that many persons in that community today remain uncompensated for the destruction of trees which had to take place in relation to the alignment and the change of alignment of this roadway. You see, Chairman, the point that we make is that communities bear the dust nuisance, the noise nuisance. Communities bear the inconvenience. Those people who live there. And it is our recommendation that when we ponder Broadgate and the developments out there, that at the heart of that development, we also have to not only take into account the engineering aspects, the geotechnical aspects, but we have to take into account the people who carry the day-to-day burden of that development. That's the first point, Chair. The second point is that hill of which we speak, which the district people call Trouble Hill, if I remember well. We at the Office of the Public Defender expressed concerns about cutting that hill. And because we are not engineers and because we are not geotechnical people, we commissioned a report to be provided to us, which we shared with the National Works Agency. And it appeared to us, based on the advice given to the Office of the Public Defender, that that hill was too weathered. The soil composition was too weathered to be benched. As a part of our responsibility to the people of that community, we spent many days out there. We were in communication with the National Works Agency and we expressed concerns. People will remember also that we have had a landslide in that area since that benching was done. We see a section that appears to stand up almost virtually in your face. And we, non-scientific people, but advised by our geotechnical report that that too will come down. We express alarm that this, despite the challenges, and we understand the susceptibility of that particular roadway to fall, it is taking way too long. One final point, Chairman and committee. The notion of starting the work early, and there is great value in starting the work early, but as distinct from carrying out the varying soil tests and soil analyses, it would seem to us, from our standpoint, that it would be better to get the soil test and all of those other materials in hand before the soil or the hillside is cut. I say that, Chair, because we see it in another area. That subject matter is not before the committee today, and that is in the Sansan area. That you cut, and as you cut, you see another type of soil, and therefore you have to cut deeper and deeper to be able to get the stability that is required. Chairman, as I close, we continue to have concerns about the stability of that hillside that has been cut in the Broadgate area as to whether or not it will stand up to the 75-year period that was told to us. And we continue to express concern that even the toe walls, some of them have been languishing in the sun. The steelwork uncovered, exposed to the element, month after month as you pass through. And we would urge, Chairman, that we consider a review of this particular contract. And we are not making any issue as to how the contract was awarded. That has not been our concern. We assume that it was awarded properly. We want a follow-up on this so that this particular contract can meet this revised completion date. We believe it is time enough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Madam. And I take it that it is duly noted by the NAA staff and also the representative from the ministry. And so we will dialogue the committee along with NAA and the ministry to see to it that the concerns that were posed by the Public Defender's Office, that it be looked into, and if there is any other matter that you will create a report, so to speak, of the concerns, and we'll make sure that it be passed to the Public Defender's Office.
I'll just make one. It's certainly not my intention to rebut.
And I would hope that you do.
Right, absolutely not. Suffice it to say that what the Honorable Public Defender has outlined is indeed matters that we have been engaged with the Office of the Public Defender certainly for the last 2.5 years on. So this is turf that we have gone over and over, and we intend to continue that engagement with the Office of the Public Defender on this and any other matter that they choose to bring to our attention.
Thank you. The next matter on the agenda, the report, Charlemont Drive.
Okay, so let me make a quick comment on that matter, Chairman, because we're a little bit bemused about the existence of this matter. As I understand it, the matter was referred to us by virtue of a letter under the hand of esteemed public defender of August 18, 2021, that had, there were 6 points in the letter, one of which related to the NAA, and it was in the form of a question. And if I could read for the committee just the matter that pertains to the NAA, it says, and I quote, "I write to find out from you whether it was the National Works Agency who had refurbished, stroked, repaved the road, and if so, the cost of such refurbishment repaving, full stop, I would be obliged to receive the information from you by Monday, August 23, 2021. So my understanding, Chairman, Committee, is that that is the fulcrum of the involvement of the NWA. Suffice it to say, Chairman, that we had, as we normally do, responded to esteemed public defender in a meeting at her place, yes, to indicate that the NWA was not involved in this project. So that being the case, we were hardly in a position to provide any costs or whatever because we had no involvement.
Chairman, just looking at the report and even that has been presented to us by the Golden Triangle Neighborhood Association, which I figure at some point we will get into this also. No? But I think that there are some certain other agencies that should have been invited to the meeting itself to answer some of the questions that are basically being asked by the Citizen Association, especially on Charlemont. No, meaning the National Water Commission, because it was a sewer main that was being laid. So I would suggest that I don't know how much we can get into this report now, seeing that the National Water Commission is not here to answer some of the issues. I will also say, Chairman, that this issue, this report from the Golden Triangle Neighborhood Association is one that needs to be dealt with also, just on a national level, not only in the Kingston metropolitan area, but island-wide, because I think that there's a lot of questions that need to be asked, especially of NEPA and the various municipal authorities that give the permission.
Member, sorry. The matter that we have before us is a report from
Charlemont. Yes.
Fine, but I realize that you're now going into...
No, well, the greater point I'm making is that there are other agencies that need to be...
And so I will treat with it as soon as we get to matters arising.
Go ahead then. Sure.
You're through with it? Are there any other concern question as it reports to... as it relates to the report from Charlemont Drive?
Yeah, Chairman, I think there are a couple of issues here. I heard what Mr. Hunter said in terms of the NWA was not involved, and I accept that. But there's a broader policy issue related to when private developers are undertaking projects which involve the public good, meaning to America, digging up the road to lay sewage lines, where does the responsibility lie in terms of oversight, monitoring, etc.? And while sewage is principally an NWC issue, roads are an NWA issue. And as someone, it's not my constituency, but my family house is there, and I've had to traverse the road during the construction period. There were serious issues with it in terms of being a hazard and a danger to motorists where the roads just sank. It went through about 2 or 3 iterations until it was eventually done properly. So from a policy perspective, even though it is not NWA who undertook the work, there must be some oversight in terms of ensuring that the public good, which you have responsibility for as NWA, is restored in a manner consistent with your own standards. And that's really the issue I would raise with you. There are other issues, and I know the public defender would raise that. But there's always been this, I don't want to call it tension, because you sat at NWC too. But every one of us as MPs can give example upon example of works in our constituency where one agency does it, not complete. Either NWA says NWC, NWC says NWA. But there has to be a policy directive where in these particular cases, where it's done.
Just a minute. Can we ask that the mic, madam, be off?
So for me, there's a broader policy issue that I believe I had heard, and don't hold me to it, that Cabinet had given directives around this particular matter because it was such a vexed issue in terms of NWA and NWC and that cooperation.
Again, Chairman, my quick response to that is I think Committee Member Robinson subscribing to the horn effect. I've said it here, certainly in the last 4 or 5 years, that by policy, the government has indicated that wherever the NWA carries out roadworks of any magnitude, it should be considered an infrastructure installation. So as we did on Constant Spring, Hagley Park, wherever, we have incorporated all the basic infrastructure in the project. Now, what that does, that solves the age-old problem of NWA building a new road and having excavations subsequent to that. Now, that does not address the issue where there are significant portions of the city and other places that do not have basic infrastructure, which is they don't have sewer, which is one of the big thing, and where you have old water main and there's no duct for fiber optic cables and so on. So if we accept the premise that sewering the city is a necessary undertaking, and why is it a necessary undertaking? Well, every day the average household flushes 500 gallons of untreated sewage into the aquifer. And that is why there are no wells in Kingston and St. Andrew, because even though there's a preponderance of water underneath, it cannot be used Mr. because Hunter, it's polluted.
Nobody challenging the issue of the need for sewage. That's not the issue here. Not the issue.
So the point I'm trying to make is this. In everything in life, there is cost and there's value. And so the value of putting in sewer main is you get better water supply, it's public health, it cleans up the environment. So that's the value. The cost is there is a disruption while it is being done simply because habitation has taken place before that infrastructure was put in. There's no other way for it to be done. So if the infrastructure was never put in at day one, it means that in Hope Pastors, wherever, there's going to come a time when you have to go and you have to lay sewer mains and the excavation has to be done. Now, I take your point that to the extent that construction techniques and traffic management and so on and so forth can be brought to bear on the construction activity to lessen the inconvenience to the population, then yes, we'll do that. And that is something that I think all the entities of government are committed to. But I don't think that one wants to walk away with any notion that these things can be done without a certain amount of dislocation.
So Hunter, respectfully,
yes.
I don't know if you're deliberately missing my point. I know that you have to run these sewer mains because we want underground water. We don't have to go through that. We don't have to go through the fact that you want to minimize the disruption. That is a given. That should be part of every project. But I can tell you about Hopefield Avenue, which preceded me as Member of Parliament, where the roads still fall down after 12 years of putting sewage in place. That's not acceptable. The point I'm trying to make here, I understand why a developer has to do it. The point I'm making is NWA, as the agency responsible for public roads, must have some oversight when roads are being restored so that you don't have a car dropping at the middle of the road, which is what almost happened at Charlemont on not one occasion, but 2 or 3. That's what I talk about. When I talk about the disruption to the people who live there, they can speak. I know. That is what I'm talking about. There must be oversight. Whether NWC have the responsibility, because it is sewage, NWA control road. And it can't be left. What is happening now? And that's why this group is here. Project after project where private developers are given the responsibility to put in sewage lines, the roads are not restored properly. Plenty time. And a 3-time Charlemont go through it. And I can give other road. I can give Argyle in my own constituency. I tell you Hopefield after 12 years. I can name them. Because every time after some little rainfall, the road fall down. And car must drop in there. And that I talk about.
Okay. I understand your concern, member. I won't venture into whether or not you have espoused a position which is desirable. As to whether or not by statute or by policy I have that prerogative, that's another matter. Suffice it to say that it goes without argument that if and when excavation is done to lay infrastructure, then the reinstatement should be of an acceptable manner. And I certainly will continue to have dialogue with my colleagues in other entities to ensure that that's done. Yeah.
Isn't it a matter of road ownership now?
Sorry. Before you remember...
That is also an issue as to who owns the road.
Hold a minute.
I know, sorry. It was just a follow-up on what Mr. Robinson. Because if it is a matter of road ownership, again, because there is not a one road authority.
Precisely.
So some roads fall under the municipal council, some roads fall under the NWA.
Right.
You are only taking responsibility for those under the NWA.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
While the municipal council, so there is a responsibility also. But I think the greater point that Member Robinson is trying to make is that there ought to be an overall, because no matter who owns the road, as far as Jamaicans are concerned, it is still the government of Jamaica's road.
I accept.
And there's a missing policy in the reinstatement of roads, no matter which agency that digs it up. If there is a policy, we don't know, but obviously it is not being adhered to.
I agree with you entirely, and that's why I was suggesting to Member Robinson that my prerogatives are defined by either statute or policy, and I cannot take onto myself a mandate, no matter how laudable that mandate is. I mean, my mandate is given. It's not something that I assume. Suffice it to say, though, that between ourselves for the roads that we have responsibilities for and the municipal corporation for the roads that they have responsibility for, and for the other entities of government that under law have the authority to excavate roads and to lay their infrastructure without prior permission, because that's the law, that collectively we need to do a better job. Now, as to how we get that done is something that we will work on.
So just to add to that, Chair and committee members, we would have asked as a ministry for the NWA to provide guidelines to us. This was recent in terms of how they rehabilitate roads after laying pipes, and e.g. that will be shared with you, because what we are looking for is a consensus. But the point is taken, and it's very important that we get all the authorities that deal with different types of roads on board so we can have one consensus, and then to who will do the total monitoring of such member
Phillips, I think that Madam the Public Defender hand was up for quite some time now. What I would say to you before you speak, Madam, is that yes, I am the chairperson and I do observe hands that indicate, so you're always taking.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the members have expressed clearly some of the concerns, and we had expected that there would have been representatives from the National Water Commission, because we did not meet face-to-face, Mr. Hunter. We had a Zoom meeting with your representative on the 16th of September. And what we were told is that your records did not show that the National Works Agency was advised about the cutting of the Charlemont Drive. And what we found concerning is that the representative from the National Works Agency went on to explain that there were other developments taking place in the community and that there may not be a coincidence of road cutting. So we're not talking about the inconvenience that the community would suffer or road management, traffic flow and so on. What we're concerned about are governance issues as to how it is roads under your jurisdiction, Mr. Hunter, are cut and restored. And we would like to see established protocols for the roads to be cut to facilitate development, to facilitate a more hygienic standard of living across the island, for people to come into the sewage main, and again, for community engagement, so that all persons who live on the road would have the capacity to now join into that sewage main, to include the houses on the downside, that the pipes were laid low enough for them to connect. So what we really want is for the establishment of protocols between the Works Agency and the Water Commission as to how the roads are going to be cut for the laying of the pipes, how the roads are going to be adequately restored, that the road don't collapse as occurred in this, instance, where the road collapsed. And the explanation given by the National Water Commission was some tropical depression passing. And then when we said, yes, okay, it passed, they then offered another explanation, the verges to the side. But those green verges, Mr. Chairman, were themselves cut by the National Water Commission in the trenching to lay the pipes. The point of the matter is, Mr. Chairman, the repeated cutting of the same road by successive developers must have a plan. It must have a coordinated plan. Otherwise, communities are going to have their road cut today, a developer ready next month, he cut next month, and so on. And we do not believe that that is in the public good. Chairman, what we want to say is that there has to be some coordination between the National Works Agency that has responsibility for that road and those roads in the community, because they are main roads, and the National Water Commission.
Moot.
It cannot be, Mr. Chairman, that communities are subject to the cutting of the road at different junctures in the development. In addition, and finally, when we look at how that road was finally restored by the Water Commission, and I think the picture on the screen to the right, or to my right, shows what we at OPD would describe as a patching of the road. We believe, Chairman, that we diminish our communities when we patch the road, and the road has different colors all over. We believe that more care can be taken in patching in a way that it sort of better blends into the rest of the road. And those are our submissions.
Mr. Chairman, again, esteemed public defender and ourselves have always had continuing dialogue, but I think the public defender would be a little bit hard-pressed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that all the roads that are being cut are indeed owned by the NWA. I quite often remind persons that the NWA, by law, is responsible for main roads, what's the definition of a main road? Well, it's not a big road, it's not a small road, it's not a road that's well traversed. It's a road that's in a schedule. So if it's in the schedule, it's mine. If it's not in the schedule, it's not mine. Notwithstanding, on behalf of the government, suffice it to say that the sentiments expressed, there's no gainsaying those sentiments, that regardless of who owns the road, there should be a structured program for the reinstatement of said road whenever said road is cut. Yes, that is, there's no gainsaying. No, but as I said before, Madam Public Defender, the NWA cannot take onto itself a mandate simply because that it's good for society. We are, after all, creatures of decisions and policy. So, but that doesn't negate from the bigger point that you have made, and that's accepted.
Chairman, could I just say that the standard of proof, as outlined by my friend, Mr. Hunter, is not the standard that guides our Commission of Parliament. Suffice it to say, in relation to Charlemont, we specifically asked the NWA's representative as to NWA's relationship to the Charlemont Drive, and there was an admission that the NWA had jurisdiction over it. But I'm happy to know that Mr. Hunter agrees that there is need for established protocol and established practice for the restoration of roads. And I would want to recommend, out of these proceedings, Mr. Chairman, and it can only advance communities, it can only advance us as a society, that we establish these protocols, and we do it in a manner that when roads are going to be cut, that communities are made aware, communities understand why the cutting of the road, and that those in the community who wish to take advantage of the new level of sewage being allowed to the community, that they be given all that opportunity. Thank you, Mr.
Jeremy Francis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. I'm speaking as a resident of Charlemont Drive. I am one of those who had to suffer quite a bit because of the dust nuisance, because of the fact that our road was turned into what I can only describe as a riverbed. There, as Mr. Robinson pointed out, there are several instances where motorists who were bold enough to drive on the road had their vehicles damaged. Some of them are residents and homeowners of Charlemont Drive who have documented evidence of the damage to their vehicles. And in some of our meetings with the National Water Commission, we were told to submit those invoices and that they would be dealt with. In our case on Charlemont Drive, and I'd like to thank the public defender for all her support, but in our case on Charlemont Drive, the sewage main was brought onto Charlemont Drive to facilitate a development at number 11 Charlemont Drive, which happens to be owned by Mr. Mark Barnett, who happens to be the head of the National Water Commission. Were it not for that development, Charlemont Drive would not have been dug up and made a mess of the way it was. We've had to, we had several meetings with the National Water Commission. We have a very active neighborhood watch group, and we actually only found out about the sewage line going in because we saw a notice in the newspaper. No one from the National Water Commission took the time to contact our neighborhood watch group or anybody on Charlemont Drive prior to the implementation of that project.
Member Brown.
Mr. Chairman,
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Afternoon all. To you, Mr. Hunter, this question is really one for clarity. And it's just a follow-up question to the public defenders and other members who would have joined the discussion earlier. But the arrangement between the NWA and NWC, I know it varies. Is there an arrangement more so with roads that are now being rehabilitated to have pipelines that have been on the ground for many, many years? What should I say, come to the surface or relate completely? Because we realize that as soon as these pipelines, as soon as these roads are completed, we have this problem of roads being dug up all over the place.
Sir Hunter.
Mr. Brown, all the best for the new year. You missed my greetings when I first gave it. But the notion, Mr. Brown, that these roads have been fixed and they're all dug up afterwards, I'm submitting to you that that was a thing of the past. And if you have evidence to contradict me, I'd be very happy to look at it. As I indicated before, there are two things. Let's be practical. I don't think, and I don't speak for the Water Commission, but I don't think people at the Water Commission get up every day and decide, well, okay, let me go find a road to excavate. Excavating the road arises because of certain circumstances. There's a leak or somebody wants a service and they have to provide the service. Now, most of the times the excavation that arises after a road has been worked on came about simply because the pipes have been lying there in sweet repose for 60 years, and here comes a road construction activity with heavy equipment that stresses the pipes, and then the leaks manifest. If the leak manifests during the construction, it is fixed that time. But generally, the leaks usually manifest sometime after. And so that is why, Mr. Brown, when we did the recent works all over the place, Hagley Park, Constant Spring, the water main on Constant Spring Road was 87 years old. 87 years old. It's an old cast iron main, which meant that putting the equipment on that road to try and fix that road as we were doing, you were going to have leaks. And that is why the government took the decision to fund the replacement of all the water mains. So I am hopeful, Mr. Brown, and happy that we are at a juncture where, because of a coordinated effort in terms of infrastructure installation, once we do these new roads, and we're doing it along the south coast, all the way from Harborview to Port Antonio, water and sewage has been put in coincidental with the road works. Mandela, it's done all over the place, and that is the posture going forward. Now, it doesn't address the existing neighborhoods and so on, and that has to be done. And that is where I agree with the esteemed public defender that when works are being done in these neighborhoods, there needs to be a good protocol and an understanding. We have an arrangement with the NWC to fix cuts which they have undertaken in the normal course of their business, and they report them to us, and we go and we fix. The issue of development and putting in sewer mains, and Mr. Barnett can speak for himself, but just for the record, I am not aware that any employee of the government or any portion of the government is stopped from undertaking a development with his own funds. Now, we can argue as to the mode of implementation and the discomfort that arose from the implementation, but the notion that somehow undertaking such an activity is by itself, not permitted. I don't know. I don't agree with that. Sewer mains have been laid in Kingston on a whole set of Paddington, all over the place, simply because sewer mains give you two big things. One, it's an environmental intervention because Kingston has very little sewer. And secondly, it allows for improved density in terms of development. So there is a huge uptick in terms of capital gains when sewer mains are established. So it is, on the evidence, a good thing. So, we can argue the mode of implementation, as I said before, but I don't think there is an issue, or there ought to be an issue made about the provision of that service in and of itself.
Member Phillips.
Well, I just want to make 2 points. One, is it that the NWA, Mr. Hunter, saying that Charlemont is not an NWA-controlled road? Is that a question? Huh?
Member Phillips, the law says that for the roads in the main road schedule, the NWA has the authority to maintain, but does not have a duty unless funds are provided.
No, so
that is.
I don't. No, okay, Mr. Hunter, hold on. We just start the year. Eh?
But you asked me a question and I'm answered because
I don't have the schedule in front of me.
Okay.
So I'm asking you if that road, Charlemont Road, is on your schedule as a NWA main road? Is either yes or no? You know?
Well, the last time I looked at the share, I didn't see it there.
It is not there.
Yeah. I didn't see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm coming to the chairman now, because I think that this issue is a greater issue, especially in the KMA, because many of the developments are happening on roads that are deemed municipal council roads. And a lot of them are being dug up. And these sewer mains, which is a greater good, not saying no, but the same agency that is giving the approval ought to see for the oversight, or even contract the NWA as an oversight. And we don't know if that is being done. And I am making the recommendation, Chairman, that we don't just end it here, because I think that the NWC itself needs to appear in front of the committee with this esteemed set of representatives, and the KSAIC, or Kingston Municipal Council, also represented. Because the truth is that we have to get to the bottom of it. Outside of what Mr. Watson is saying, that there is going to be a somewhat join-up approach, which I'm disappointed that I've been in here nearly 10 years now, and I've been hearing about that. But I'm saying better late than never. Yeah? Better late than never. But I'm making a suggestion, Chairman, that we reschedule another meeting, but to bring those two agencies to the committee so that they can answer the wider questions that needs to be asked.
May I just make a very, very quick intervention?
Before you, Mr. Hunter, member, you raised the issue earlier, and I did say to you that when it comes to matters arising, I will deal with that.
Sorry, Chairman, I did not hear.
No, you did
apologize. Hear. I did? I wouldn't ask it a second.
And you tell me okay.
I thought it was, no. The okay was when you told me that that is not my time, and I said okay. So
Chairman,
let me clarify
the last point I was going to make, I mean, just to remind the committee and others that in terms of roads in Jamaica, the NWA owns 5,000 kilometers of main roads that's in a schedule. The municipal councils own 15 to 16,000 kilometers of their roads. The Ministry of Agriculture owns 12 to 1,500 kilometers of their roads. And there's another 4,000 kilometers of roads in development and in housing schemes that's not owned by anybody. Okay.
And that's why I make the suggestion again, there has to be one road authority.
So the point I'm trying to make,
with roads overall.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make is that let us not form any conclusion that Charlemont or Kingston and St. Andrew is the only location where things are happening.
Mr. Hunter, member Felix, I'm going to rule on it now. The fact of the matter is that there's a concern raised and brought before us by the Charlemont residents. The issue has been ventilated quite a bit today, and so I am not knowing where Charlemont Road is, as I'm somebody from out in the west. I am well aware of what transpired during the construction and the fall down of the road and the reconstruction and the rehabilitation, as was said by Madam Public Defender. I am saying to us that yes, it calls for a visit. It calls for a visit to the protocols of how roads are rehabilitated when it is used by the different agencies to do whatever infrastructural work that needs to be done for the greater good of the citizen, and so that either of the two entities that the task is vested with, which is the NWA or the MCs, whichever parish they are, that they must provide an oversight body to see to it that the roadway is reconstructed, rehabilitated, or regained to the state that it was in before the work would have been done. All of us as Member of Parliament inside here would have had from time to time the argument, the concern, the quarrel, the questioning. Why is it that our roads were not rehabilitated to the state that they were in before. Would love to have, when an agency do some work, that the rehabilitation would be better than what it was before. We're not getting that. We're not getting that. And let's not hide ourselves. In some instances, we're not getting that. But bring us back to the state that we were in before. And so we would have accepted the recommendations, would have listened to the Office of the Public Defender, would have listened to member Jeremy Francis from the Citizen Association, and I observed the facial expressions of the others who have not spoken, that the sentiments shared by the two persons voicing the concern and opinions are what they too are alluding to. Notwithstanding, would have heard from members of this committee in the same breath. And so there is a task at hand that we as a committee need to put forward some recommendations going forward and to see it becoming a policy paper where the protocols of rehabilitating roadways are concerned. At this time, we are now 25 minutes into the hour. Parliament starts at 2, and so we have to make way for those who have the responsibility for the vetting and cleaning of the chamber, for them to get time enough to do the necessary. There is one matter that is before us, was never on the agenda, and so we will have to take time at the next sitting to deliberate on it, to see at what point we are going to take this matter, because it now speaks not only to NWA. I think a section on page 5B, it speaks to the invitation of NEPA, NWA, NWC, the KSAMC to give an account to the committee. And so we will have to send the invitation to these agencies and give them enough time for them to prepare themselves to come to us to speak on the whole matter of the protocols as it relates to the rehabilitation and works being done. Notwithstanding, Mr. Hunter, I know, because I was a part of the St. James Municipal Corporation for years, and I know that part and parcel of when works are to be done in a community, that is not only the political rep that is notified, the citizens should be given notice and called to a sensitization meeting where they can ask questions and get answers long before, so that the works that are to be done will be done in a harmonious way. Both parties, who is doing the work, those who are benefiting or it is affected, will be on the same page, and people like Mr. Jeremy Francis will know that, yes, he is going through an uncomfortable time, but it is for the greater good of him and his members. At this time, I will say to us, by virtue of the time, the clock on the wall, we have no other matter to be discussed, that this meeting now will be adjourned until further notice.
But to the question again, Chairman, is it that we're going to be inviting, because I haven't heard you mention, are we going to be inviting the two agencies?
Member, you are not listening.
No, I never hear you.
I know, you're not listening. I did read from page 5.
No.
Section B.
That's a different, I'm speaking about the Charlemont matter.
It speaks to the whole protocol and
no. Chairman, there are two different
so
matters.
We are going to be inviting...
Chairman, I'm asking your permission.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please. There are two different matters. There is one that is coming from the Golden Triangle dealing with development overall.
Yes.
And there is a matter dealing with the Charlemont issue and other areas within the KMA dealing with the laying of sewers and pipelines.
But the mere fact that this document speaks to all that has happened in Charlemont and other communities.
So you're saying that it will be dealt with under one matter?
Once they are here before us, once invitation goes out, we will tell them what is expecting of them to answer. And so they will come prepared.
I'm not from the West. I don't know how you communicate down there. So I'm just trying to get it clear. Thank you.
No, we have vented the Charlemont. No, we are going to do. We are going to be doing a holistic, entire. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sir, I just wanted to make a point that we have no objection to Mr. Barnett having a personal project, building project. We had no objection. I just wanted to correct Mr. Hunter. We had no objection to that. It is unfortunate.
Sorry. I understand where you're going, but as not to create a bias in the minds of others who are not here, that we lay to rest until.
I just wanted to lay that to rest there. Thank you.
At this time, this meeting now stand adjourned.
I so move for the motion for adjournment.